Well, we wake up every day to another commercial, a newscast, a Facebook or a TikTok post, a government report, or a neighborhood scuttlebutt that gives us one more reason to worry. Did you know 1 in 3 adults over the age of 50 will get shingles? Violent carjackings have risen by 57% in the past year. Some of our own young people are chanting, "Death to America!" Our prisons are overrun. Criminals are not prosecuted. The environment is becoming more toxic by the week. Food and energy prices are skyrocketing. Racial divisions are widening. Christian believers are being targeted, and once trusted institutions are being weaponized. Gender lines are being blurred. The sky is falling. Time is running out. Act quickly. Do what we say. Fear is making us easy prey for any group or person who promises something that will protect us, regardless of the long-term cost or the short-sighted reasoning. Marketers once capitalized on the fact that sex sells. Now it's fear. America runs on fear. Well, everybody just needs to take a breath. But how? Well, hi, I'm Doug Newton, pastor for 45 years and author of 24 books in a national award-winning magazine. And this is At the Intersection with Doug Newton, where scripture, culture, and character meet. Now, I'm here to help you pursue the kind of character that's needed to align with scripture faithfully and to engage culture graciously. Each week, I make one observation about our culture. I give one insight from the Bible that speaks to that issue, and I suggest one way to strengthen the character that you and I need to relate to our mixed-up world with exemplary grace and fresh impact. As I say week after week, this is a no-gripe zone. Our question is not what's wrong with our culture. It's about what's the right way to respond. So you ready? All right. Here we go. Spring of 2020 has gone down in world history, the year the pandemic shut down the world. Everyone wearing a mask, social distancing, wiping down packages, all the lockdowns. A silent, invisible killer stalked us, and our only hope was to protect ourselves. And so the Department of Health demanded compliance and told us, including our kids, that we might kill our own parents or grandparents if we dared disregard the rules. It's heavy. No one was happy about the rules, but COVID was a killer. And our only hope was to stop the spread, minimize the number of deaths, shorten the duration of the pandemic. That was the goal. And the predictions were grim. The nightly news reported, remember, the ups and downs of the numbers of deaths each day, and millions of people died. Not only the virus spread destructively, but so did fear. We wound up fighting not only the virus, but each other. Families, churches, communities ripped themselves apart due to differences over whether churches or schools should shut down, the effectiveness of masks, social distancing. And then came mandatory vaccination requirements in order for us to even be able to circulate in public. Perhaps the most heart-crushing regulations involved people not being allowed to visit dying family members in the hospital. My own family experienced one case of the documented emotional trauma involving young teen girls isolated for months as schools were shut down. Now, I'm not here to argue which strategies were right. I have my own opinions, some strong ones, in fact, especially now as more evidence is coming out about misinformation and disinformation and censorship and psychological, emotional, physiological effects, the loss of learning and the impact, especially on the poor and the disadvantaged. But what I am here to talk about today is the role fear played during the COVID years. but even more, to point out how fear, well before COVID, was already running and, dare I say, ruining our culture. Wealthy cultures like ours have the resources to ward off most forms of suffering that are pandemic in other parts of the world: bad water, malnutrition, rampant disease. And so consequently, we lack the opportunities to face pain and develop the skills that you need to just handle fear. I mean, like kids who never go outside to play but sit around all day playing video games, we sit in the lap of luxury compared to the rest of the world, and we never are forced, in a sense, to strengthen our hearts to handle hard knocks that might strike us. So we worry about everything. Madison Avenue, the metaphorical symbol for marketing, pays attention and measures, what motivates people, and they shape their advertising campaigns accordingly. Well, have you noticed how fear motivation seems to dominate the marketing industry these days? Big Pharma fills our screens with what might happen to you if you don't get vaccinated against any number of diseases, from shingles to hepatitis C. American politics runs on fear. I mean, both sides accuse the other side of bringing an end to democracy. A third side warns us that a two-party system ruins democracy. The burgeoning diversity, equity, and inclusion industry incapacitates most good-hearted, non-racist people with plaguing worries that they might actually be racists. I can no longer open a door for a woman and say, "After you," without being afraid I might offend her. Gone is my freedom to give a female even a side hug, just in case it's perceived as a sexual act and make her feel unsafe. I could keep going on, listing examples for more than an hour. And I don't want to suggest that no one has any reason to fear any of these possibilities. I mean, you might go outside today and have a crane fall on your car with you inside. You might be driving over a bridge when a bridge collapses. I mean, these things just happened recently, didn't they? And in fact, they seem to happen so frequently because news reports of these rare occurrences eventually have kind of a compounding effect, leaving us common folk feeling like we are constantly at risk and unsafe. And we want to feel safe. But how safe can we feel when our culture is so bent on protecting people from potential danger and hardship that even university campuses, once bastions of the free exploration and exchange of ideas, now ban the expression of certain points of view because some small handful of students might feel unsafe if they heard those ideas? I mean, it's no longer a matter in our culture of pursuing personal safety for all people. I mean, helping people remember to buckle up for safety. That's a good thing to get those reminders. But nowadays, it's no longer the pursuit of personal safety. It's the pursuit of the feeling of personal safety. We're obsessed with making sure everyone feels safe. I want to know, before I walk out my door, that nothing bad is going to happen to me. Wait, no, forget about walking out my door. I want to know I don't already have a ticking bomb inside of me. Give me a DNA test. Let me see if I've got any of those genes. I want to know that a plane won't fall from the sky on my house like I saw on the news the other night. See, fear. I mean, America runs on fear. And like a hybrid electric car that charges its battery as it runs, fear charges its own battery. It generates more fear, no longer coming from worries about bad things that might happen. No, that's not enough. Now it's about good things that might not happen. I mean, the new acronym, is FOMO, fear of missing out. I need to know I'm not missing out on something other people have that I should be able to have. that I want to have, that I won't be fulfilled if I don't have, that I won't be happy if I don't, that I won't enjoy myself, that I won't have enough money to buy the average price ticket of $1,088 for the next Taylor Swift concert. I want to be able to have that kind of life. So the federal government says, for those of you who took out the college loans to help you avoid that horrible tragedy, here, we will pay off your college loan so you can have the other things that you want, all except the character it takes to pay off debts. Perhaps you've never seen the connection that I just made between trying to eliminate any possible fear and the decline of character, but it's true. There is a direct connection. If you don't handle fear properly, fear destroys character. This is much of the reasoning behind President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's famous statement about fear in his 1933 inaugural address to a nation that was in the throes of the Great Depression. When 11,000 banks failed, millions of families saw their life savings wiped out, and unemployment increased exponentially along with long breadlines for hungry people. But to those people facing such shattering circumstances, this new president had the temerity to say these words.
I will address them with a candor and a decision which the present situation of our people impels. So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance.
So I think I've established the fact that we are a culture that runs on fear. Now the question. As it is in every podcast, how do we relate to this fear-driven culture with grace? In many of my podcasts, that question leads to how we have to adjust our attitude so we react graciously. But today, relating with grace has more to do with how can we relate helpfully, not just graciously. If all around us are people who live in fear, what will help them not be so afraid? And I believe that there is a contribution that you and I can make to create a fearless culture. I'm not saying a fearless culture, as in having no fear at all. I'm saying a fearless culture, a culture where people fear less. Your corner of the world needs more people who aren't running around crying, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. So how about becoming a more steady, less hyper person than you may be currently? That would be a gift to the world. Someone who's more relaxed, taking uncertainties and unsettling realities in stride. This can be a gift to our hyper-worried world. One time, after about 6 or 7 years as a pastor, I freaked out on a Sunday morning. About an hour before church started, I was up in my study up at the second floor, and I fell apart. I felt like I couldn't go on, and I wept uncontrollably for 10, 15 minutes. I was overcome with a sense of inadequacy. I can't do this. And I felt like this must be what it's like to have a nervous breakdown. So I called an older man in our congregation whom I respected for his wisdom. He was a biblical scholar, traveled the world, but just a very wise, gracious man. And I asked him to come to church early and help me. When he arrived and he saw me, all he said was, "My." See, that's how broken I looked. And so he listened to me pour out my fears and through tears and sobbing my inconsolable sense of inadequacy. Eventually he responded. His words were at that moment disappointingly sparse. I mean, he could have preached for me that morning, to bring me relief. He could have said, "Hey, Doug, I'm ready. I've got something I can talk about, and I'll be glad to take your place." But he did not offer to bail me out. He just said, and these words were and are among the most important in my life. He just said, "Well, you better get down there. Church is about to start." But his words were steady. He never said, "You can do it, Doug," as if he were a cheerleader trying to spur me on. Instead, he just represented calmness in the face of my horrified face. He didn't react, "Oh, no, you might be having a nervous breakdown. Let's get you some help." When in retrospect, I don't know. That is maybe what was happening. But his steady, calm, and firm response, "Well, you better get down there. Church is about to start," was him saying, "Fear not. Steady on." He was honest, confident. So I went down to the sanctuary, kind of broken, and carried on. And 40 years later, I've never had that sense of fear and inadequacy again. We can be that kind of person for others in this fear-filled culture. We can be someone whose life is a visible invitation not to be afraid. There's a biblical mindset that we can adopt and live out with character. You'll find this mindset revealed in something that Jesus told his 12 disciples at their very first commission in Matthew 10. It's recorded. Just the day before that commission, he had told them to look out at the ripe harvest and to pray for workers. Then he spent the night in prayer, I think, deciding on who he was going to call. And the next day, he called them together to give those 12 authority to preach the message of the kingdom of God come to earth. And it was accompanied by the power of that good news for healing and so forth. But then, immediately after that, he gave them the bad news. He warned them that not everyone is going to appreciate you and what you're doing. In fact, you're going to be like sheep among wolves. You need to be careful and shrewd, but make no mistake, no matter how guarded you are, they will hunt you down, they will arrest you, they will flog you and persecute you even more. And you'll have to keep running from place to place. People will hate you. Even your own family members will turn against you. They will want you dead. And then Jesus said, and here's the mindset. He said, "Do not be afraid of those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Rather, be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body." Matthew 10:28. He's saying, when you're afraid, make sure that fear doesn't make you forget about something that's far worse. On another occasion, Jesus spoke from that same mindset, but this time with a twist. He said, if your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. Because he said, it is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And he went on to emphasize it again. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off, throw it away. It's better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go to hell. That's what you should be afraid of, not just being maimed. Matthew not only took what Jesus said and recorded it once, but he actually recorded these same words twice. I mean, he must have thought this was really important. This is an important mindset. You have to keep focused on the most important thing to protect. Jesus was saying, fear most losing the most important things in life. Now, it happens, of course, in this case, that Jesus pulled out all the stops and he played the trump card. You don't want to lose your soul, do you? But don't miss the broader application. Whenever you're afraid and you start worrying and obsessing about preventing something bad from happening, make sure you're not ignoring something more important in the process. For example, Many parents are way too afraid of what might happen to their kids hovering around them. I mean, something bad could happen, so they're swatting away anything that could sting them, that could harm them. And what results from that? They raise kids who pick up the habit of living life in fear of what might happen. I mean, no doubt they want their kids to grow up wise about the dangers of the world, but not paranoid, not neurotic. Instead, they want them to grow in their confidence over what they can handle or learn to handle. If they act as if there are 101 threats to their safety every day, kids are going to pick that up, Do parents really want their kids to grow up afraid, insecure, unable to face challenges with courage and resolve? Of course not. Well, then, that's a big reason, a big enough reason for any parent to choose not to let fear dominate their life. Can you imagine how our little corners of the world could change if more and more people were fearless people? I'm not saying whether anyone should or shouldn't wear a mask these days, but let's just use that as a metaphor. Stop and think about the difference in our collective level of anxiety if we're out in the world and 90% of the people were wearing masks still compared to 5% of the people. One scenario is going to tend to communicate that we all should be afraid. The other scenario, very little anxiety is going to be stirred. So again, how do we relate to this mixed up world with grace? That's the missional question for each of my podcasts and At the Intersection with Doug Newton. Imagine the gift you could be giving if you go through your life with steady, confident, unworried peace that says, like my friend said to me, life is about to start again today. You need to get out there and do what you need to do. So I've prepared another crosswalk for you today with several reminders to practice kind of getting your head into that right space for preventing, for managing, and for overcoming fear. It's not a difficult crosswalk this time in terms of, having questions to answer or so forth. But what I'm doing is I'm just giving 6 kind of thoughts to put into your head that helps you get your head thinking right things as you consider the prospects of things happening that you might be afraid of. And I'll read down through these real quickly, and then you can go in more detail. The first one is, what are the odds of this thing you're fearing actually happening? And after all, secondly, we can learn things that help bring precaution into our life, like looking both ways at an intersection. Question where the fear is coming from. Who says this might happen, and why are they saying it, and are they reputable? How do you turn mountains back into molehills? There are ways to kind of dose yourself with small samples of dealing with difficulties so that you learn how to recognize that they may not be as bad as you are worried about. And then the bottom line one is, how can you really inculcate in your life what it says in Psalm 23, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. That's a choice, you see. Well, folks, that's it for this week. I am so glad you were here. I think this is such an important topic we were looking at today, and it's, of course, not covering everything that you need to know, but it's a starting point. And I hope you'll agree that this really is important for everyone to become people who fear less. Now, if you appreciate what I'm trying to do in the podcast, would you share it with friends and subscribe to the Fresh Impact YouTube channel? It really does help to have more subscribers. In 24 hours, I'll have a permanent version on YouTube and an audio-only version for those who want to be able to listen on the go. And as I've said before, all that information about the podcast, past and future, can be found on our website, and those links can be found at the end of this podcast. So again, if you think this podcast is a valuable resource and hope it will continue, I'd really appreciate you leaving me a comment or sending me an email. So I hope you'll join me again next week at the Intersection with Doug Newton. I'm going to begin a 3-part series on the immigration problems we face and how that challenges us to be people of character. Can't wait. In the meantime, remember, you can show your corner of the world how to face daily life with less fear. I'll see you then.